What happens when a person dies and stands before the gods? What is the process that leads to either eternal peace or eternal suffering? This journey takes place in the Hall of Ma'at, a sacred space where the heart of the deceased is weighed against the feather of Ma'at. The judgment here is one of the most significant moments in the ancient Egyptian understanding of life after death, and it involves gods, demons, and a scale that will determine the soul's fate for eternity. Let's begin by understanding where this judgment happens. The Hall of Ma'at, the sacred place of judgment, is where the soul arrives after death. This wasn't just any ordinary space, but a location where the cosmic forces of balance and truth were at play. The Hall of Ma'at was not only a divine space, but a symbolic one, representing the ultimate truth and justice in the afterlife. The process began with the arrival of the soul at the gates of the underworld. This place was not a lonely or frightening place. It was carefully guarded by Anubis, the god of mummification and the protector of the dead. Anubis was not only there to ensure the safety of the deceased, but also to guide them through the terrifying and awe-inspiring journey they were about to embark upon. He led the soul into the Hall of Ma'at, where the real test would take place. Now, standing before the gods and facing a judgment that could determine your fate for all eternity, the soul had to face the weighing of the heart. This was no ordinary process. It wasn't about evaluating your knowledge or achievements. It was about your actions, your morality, and how you lived your life according to Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. This was the essence of the judgment. Were you aligned with the universal laws of harmony, balance, and righteousness? Or were you weighed down by sin, lies, and greed? But what was truly at stake? The soul's heart was placed on a scale, and on the other side of the scale, there was a single feather. The feather was not just a random object. It represented Ma'at's truth and purity. If your heart was as light as the feather, free of guilt and sin, you passed the judgment. Your soul was deemed worthy of entering the afterlife, living eternally in peace with the gods. But if your heart was heavier than the feather, weighed down by wrongdoings, greed, and lies, the consequences were dire. The heart, which was believed to be the seat of a person's soul, had to be pure, free of sin, and in harmony with Ma'at. If it was found wanting, the soul would face a terrifying fate. The soul would be led to the demon Ammit, a fearsome creature that combined the parts of a crocodile, a lion, and a hippopotamus. Ammit was the devourer of souls, and once the heart was found guilty, she would devour it. This meant that the soul would never be able to reach the peaceful afterlife. Instead, it would be condemned to wander the underworld for eternity, lost and without peace. This process wasn't just about divine judgment. It was about the soul's reflection on its own actions. The gods did not simply judge based on the past. They judged based on the individual's alignment with Ma'at, the cosmic law. The gods didn't care for wealth or fame, but for the soul's purity and truth. In many ways, this judgment in the Hall of Ma'at was a reminder that the gods saw beyond what humans could see. They weren't looking at outward appearances or material possessions. They were looking at the purity of the heart and the soul. The soul didn't face this judgment alone, however. The gods played an essential role in the process. The most important god in this process was Osiris, the god of the afterlife and ruler of the dead. Osiris was the one who ultimately decided whether the soul would pass into the afterlife or be devoured by Ammit. He was the god who ensured that justice was done and that the laws of Ma'at were upheld. Osiris was assisted by other gods like Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing, who recorded the events and made sure that every detail was accurate. Hathor, the goddess of love and motherhood, also played a role in welcoming the soul into the afterlife, ensuring that it was cared for and protected. But what if the soul wasn't found wanting and was deemed pure and light? The reward was nothing less than eternal peace in the field of reeds, a paradise where the soul would live forever, free of suffering and full of joy. The soul would join the gods in this peaceful realm, living in harmony with the universe and in balance with Ma'at. The field of reeds was a place of beauty, abundance, and endless peace, a reward for living a life in accordance with the truth of Ma'at. For the ancient Egyptians, this judgment was not just a one-time event. It was an ongoing process. Throughout life, a person had the chance to align themselves with Ma'at, to live justly, to be truthful, and to act in a way that preserved the balance of the universe. The judgment in the Hall of Ma'at was the ultimate reflection of this lifelong journey. Every action, every thought, and every word mattered. The Egyptians believed that the universe was in a constant state of balance, and the judgment of the dead was just one of the many ways that this balance was maintained. The process of judgment in the Hall of Ma'at was also deeply personal. It wasn't about a final decision made by the gods in an impersonal way. It was a personal reflection on how the deceased lived their life. The gods may have been the judges, but it was the soul's own deeds and actions that determined its fate. The judgment was a mirror, reflecting the choices the soul made during its life and whether it was able to live according to the cosmic laws of Ma'at. Now, consider the profound implications of such a belief. The idea that life wasn't just about living for oneself, but living for the greater good, in harmony with the universe, was a powerful concept. In ancient Egypt, the idea of Ma'at was not just about justice in the afterlife, but about how the soul lived in the present. The judgment in the Hall of Ma'at was an ultimate reminder that life was not just about self-interest, but about the bigger picture, the cosmic order that governed everything. In many ways, the Hall of Ma'at represents the most profound spiritual reflection in ancient Egypt. It wasn't just about the afterlife. It was about how life itself was lived, and how one's actions could affect the universe. To live according to Ma'at was to live in a way that honored balance, truth, and justice, both in life and in death. The judgment in the Hall of Ma'at was not just about the past. It was about the eternal present, where each soul's actions could either lead to eternal peace or eternal suffering. This concept of judgment and afterlife wasn't just unique to ancient Egypt. Many cultures throughout history have explored the idea of judgment after death. However, the Egyptians' focus on balance and Ma'at set them apart. They understood that life was about living in harmony with the world around them, and the afterlife was an extension of this understanding. The Hall of Ma'at wasn't just a place of judgment. It was a place of ultimate truth. It showed that every action had consequences, and those consequences would be faced eventually. It also showed that life was about more than material wealth, power, or fame. It was about living with integrity and aligning oneself with the cosmic laws of the universe. In this sense, the Hall of Ma'at represents not just an afterlife judgment, but a moral framework for living in the present. As we reflect on this ancient process, it raises important questions for us today. Are we living in harmony with the universe, with truth, and with justice? Are we aligning ourselves with the greater cosmic balance that ancient Egyptians held so dear? Perhaps, like the souls in the Hall of Ma'at, we too will one day face a judgment of our own. A judgment that reflects our actions, our choices, and our commitment to living truthfully and justly. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more.